knew that as soon as I used a firearm to protect my life, that charges would be laid. That's the typical process that goes on in this country. The Crown seemed to have an agenda to make an example of me that would put the fear into every firearms owner in Canada that you are not allowed to defend your life.
Ian Thompson spoke to him last week on the program. He is a man who has been punished just through having to go through the process of defending himself. And he has to defend himself against the Crown prosecutor upset that Thompson defended himself against 4 men firebombing his home. We are at a state in Canada where they don't want you using firearms for anything, ever. And that's the push. And as we look at what's happening in the United States, that's where they're headed. So I've got a warning to my American friends. Registration will lead to confiscation. And if you don't believe me, just look at what's happened here. Now, are they going towards registration in the United States? Well, according to the Washington Post, the Obama administration is considering a national database of all firearms in the U.S. to, quote, track the movements and sale of weapons, unquote. Now, if such a database comes to fruition, it will lead to confiscation. Last year, we ended our national long gun registry here in Canada. It was a national database of every rifle and shotgun in the country that was supposed to help police, well, track the movement and sale of weapons. Now, when it was introduced 20 years ago, critics said, hold on. If we register the firearms, they're going to be confiscated. And that criticism was just dismissed. It was ridiculed. Yet that's what was happening right up until the long gun registry was dismantled. As recently as last winter, law-abiding gun owners who had complied with the registry were having their rifles confiscated. In late 2011, hundreds, if not thousands of people who had legally purchased the Army Jäger AP-80, a .22 caliber variant of the AK-47, were informed that their rifles had been deemed illegal and must be surrendered. The letter read, "You are required by law to return your firearm registration certificates without delay, either by mail to the address shown in the top left corner of this page or in person to a peace officer or firearms officers. You have 30 days to deliver your firearm to a peace officer, firearms officer, or chief firearms officer, or to otherwise lawfully dispose of them." That was sent out by the Canadian Firearms Centre.
I want the government of Mexico to know if you own a gun.
A new proposal would do just that. And as CBS 5's Elizabeth Irwin discovers, a lot of people are not happy about this one.
Arizonians are passionate about their Second Amendment rights. Passionate about making sure nobody messes with them.
It's an infringement on its highest level.
And when we told people that Arizona, a state that doesn't require its residents to register their guns, is being asked to hand a registry over to Mexico.
Mexico's asking for that?
Well, my first reaction was, I don't like it, actually.
Needless to say, they weren't excited about the idea. Here's how it would work. Mexico's Congress voted to ask the U.S. Senate to create a registry of all commercialized firearms in border states, including Arizona. Mexico's government says it'll make it easier to trace guns used in violent attacks there. But people we talk to on this side of the border are wary.
Being in light with what happened with, all the weapons, the assault weapons that went over there.
He's talking about the botched Fast and Furious investigation, a series of gun-walking operations where officials purposely allowed licensed firearms dealers to sell weapons to illegal straw buyers, hoping to track the guns to Mexican drug cartels. Problem is, most of those guns have never been seen again.
After the little fiasco that our country had, with the guns being provided by our government that went into Mexico, I think it's foolish.
It's an invasion of privacy. It's an invasion of safety.
Elizabeth Irwin, CBS 5 News.
So what?
Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today is Tuesday, February 19th, 2013. I'm Darko. Alright, I'm just going to continue here with this theme of gun control and all that. All gun shows halted in Maryland County from February 18th. Decision by Maryland County is rolling the already contentious debate over potential gun control laws. So it says Prince George County Department of Parks and Recreation is banning gun shows indefinitely. It's a temporary moratorium. We will revisit this, says Anita Pessis with the agency's Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. So it goes on here, says we're taking everybody's opinions and actions into account, and reevaluate the decision. So in other words, there might be a mass shooting or school shooting in Maryland. So just be on the look for that, for some kind of PSYOP. They're talking about engineered consent. They want to engineer Maryland citizens' consent, so they have to carry out some kind of PSYOP, i.e. school shooting, mass shooting, something like that. Also along with a lot of propaganda for people to read, like I said, to change their decisions, to scare them. Mistake in gun bill could defeat the effort. One of the major gun control efforts in Olympia, Washington, this session calls for the sheriff to inspect the homes of assault weapon owners. The bill backers say that was a mistake. So forget police drones flying over your house. How about police coming inside once a year to have a look around? As Orwellian as it sounds, it isn't hypothetical. The notion of police home inspections was introduced in a bill last week in Olympia. So he goes on and says it's part of the major gun control efforts. He says it seems in recent weeks lawmakers are heading towards some common sense regulation of gun sales, but then last week they went too far by mistake, they claim, right? So just like the Fast and Furious, ooh, it was botched. That wasn't botched, that's what they were doing. They always say we'll never go house to house to take your guns away, but then you see this and you have to wonder. It was actually a liberal, a self-described liberal, who brought the troubling bill to his attention. But it goes on here and says, this is the actual bill. In order to continue to possess an assault weapon that was legally possessed on the effective date of this section, the person possessing shall safely and securely store the assault weapon. The sheriff of the county may, no more than once per year, conduct an inspection to ensure compliance with this subsection. In other words, they can come into your homes without a warrant to poke around. Failure to comply could get you up to a year in jail. All 4 gun control measures passed Colorado House. They address high-capacity magazines, background checks, concealed weapons. They've taken the first step towards serious gun control reform with a package of 4 bills passed in the state. So they just couldn't, Colorado was, they had actually decent laws, I guess you call common sense laws, and now after all this, all the propaganda, all the engineered consent, they got what they wanted. So they're going to make gun buyers pay a fee to cover those background checks that will be required on all gun transactions, banning gun magazines with more than 15 rounds, and prohibit concealed weapons on college campuses. So, and like I said before, usually when you purchase it at gun shops, you have to get a background check anyways, which means that you're carrying out a de facto registration anyways. Missouri bill would make it illegal to propose gun control. So this is how ridiculous it gets to have laws that cover up laws and remove laws. So we have lawmakers who did so would face prison time. So it said yesterday they proposed a bill that would make it a crime punishable by up to 4 years in prison for lawmakers to propose gun control measures. Specifies that any member of the General Assembly who proposes legislation that further restricts an individual's right to bear arms will be guilty of a Class D felony, according to the House website. So it says here that the individual says he doesn't expect the bill to pass and introduce it only as a matter of principle, to get it out there, just get people thinking. Democrats sponsor bill to violate Fourth Amendment rights of gun owners. So this is what we were talking about. Washington State Democrats sponsor that bill. Little known provision that apparently goes unnoticed that would have said that the police have the right to search a private citizen's home once per year. So just a different source. The Robocop headset that lets police see through walls and identify suspects just by looking at them. So headsets display uses infrared to help spot criminals in a building. High-definition camera can be used to identify suspects. It says version for fire and ambulance crews are also under development, and it says it will compete with Google's Glass headset, which also is expected to go on sale this year. It's operated by voice commands and head movements and allows the wearer to access vital information without using their hands. So a female police officer wearing the GoldenEye headset computer, which could give officers information and even let them see around walls using infrared sensors. I guess this is a little footage or pictures of it. It says it provides infrared and video feedback to the headset, allowing them to spot suspects or perps and see maps of buildings they are investigating. So like I said before, yes, this will be used. I mean, you see it in so many sci-fi where they actually wear these weird, stupid helmets, and you're like, well, what the heck? Why are they always wearing those helmets? They're all dressed in black, and then they got those black visor helmets. Well, that's what they're doing. They have this, and it's like I was talking about with somebody else. This movie, was it 3 Days of the Condor with Robert Redford? And it was about taking stuff that was real, that was facts, and turning it into science fiction, and taking things that quote science fiction and turning them into facts. Basically had to do with writing stories, i.e. media, and putting out disinformation by the intelligence community. Then we have DARPA's active authentication program. It's aimed at verifying your identity based on your online behavior instead of easily guessed or stolen password. So it has new types of behavioral biometrics focused on the user's cognitive processors, the DARPA program manager explained. He's basically saying that it will monitor your computer habits, like your typing patterns, the way you use the mouse, or even how you construct sentences to assemble online fingerprint, footprint, digital DNA. So it says examples could include behavioral biometrics that focus on a user's unique way of typing on the device, or cognitive biometrics that focus on how the user processes language and structures a sentence. So in theory, a user would log onto his computer using a government-issued secure ID card known as Common Access Control Card. This would tell AA sensors to begin monitoring the user, analyzing typing and sentence structure, and comparing the patterns to previous behavior. It says it's not just limited to desktop computers, they'll also address mobile devices. Like I said, eventually PCs will just be obsolete. They'll just force everybody on these smartphones, unless maybe they, for government maybe use, military. DHS used police departments to gather intelligence on citizens and label them extremists. So according to the House blog website, the Obama administration is working to counter online radicalization, that's me, by violent extremist groups such as Al-Qaeda and its affiliates and adherents, violent supremacist groups, and violent sovereign citizens. So again, like I said, sovereign citizens don't call themselves sovereign citizens, because the whole point of being sovereign is that you're not a citizen. But this is what we're talking about with Obama and them leaving those loopholes and stuff with drone strikes, to be able, if they deem you to be tied to Al-Qaeda or its affiliates, which we know Al-Qaeda is a government front for their own hired mercenaries of terrorists, whoever they may be, usually pro-Zionist though, and they could drone strike you. So it says here the White House claims these groups use the internet to disseminate propaganda, identify and groom potential recruits, and supplement their real-world recruitment with resources to propagate messages of violence and division, so which is exactly being done to us, right? And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, like Alan Watts doing, cutting through the matrix, trying to get people to see what's going on here and how they do divide us and how they do have a monopoly on violence. It says through the exploitation of popular media, music videos, kind of like their own private terrorist network, Al-Qaeda, who has they're tech savvy. Yeah, they have Twitter accounts and Facebook and everything. They're on Live Leak as they're blowing up churches and mosques and mosques in Syria. Music videos, online video games. Yeah, they show showing that they have access to gas, killing rats. Talking about the Free Syrian Army. Also dragging bodies through the street of pro-Assad officials. Allegedly, there are countless opportunities to draw targets into private messages and provide their violent extremists with access to new audiences and instruments for radicalization. Scoop the nuts up, mentally ill roundup plan after train pushes. The city is making a major push to sweep the streets of dangerous mentally ill New Yorkers, and even compiled a most wanted list. It says here it follows a pair of high-profile subway shove fatalities, which I think has to do with mind control, like I said. Driving onto oncoming traffic is another form of programming, triggering of mind control. It says here they decided to take a proactive approach to track down the most dangerous mental health patients that currently have mental hygiene warrants out for them. Mental hygiene warrants. That sounds very futuristic, doesn't it? So it says here that they have this most wanted list, not because they're being sought for a crime, but because they're getting court-ordered treatment. They're not getting it. Oh, look at this. They're using high-tech methods to track down these individuals. Court-mandated meds. They have to take their court-mandated meds so they can be taken to clinics. So, Jesus, man. So here you go. Like, what would you want to do? You want to head for the woods, head under a viaduct, and patients who went off the grid were rarely pursued. Well, now they're going to be pursued. Remember this? We were talking about ecologists urge government to move beyond public existent levels of public permission. This is engineered consent. They should be able to move beyond these levels of public permission in order to shift the norms, the new normal. It's always the new normal, allowing public sentiment to later catch up with the regulation. This bullshit propaganda. Areas with higher rates of gun ownership have higher rates of suicide. Do gun-free zones work as planned? Well, actually, in fact, as gun ownership has expanded over the past decade, crime has gone down. Gun-free zones are called magnets for mass shooters. It says 2 of the 3 suspects here were shot dead by a homeowner in self-defense. You didn't hear about that, or the feds buying 2 billion rounds of ammunition, or a shortage of 22 ammunition. Also, DHS providing shooting targets of American gun owners such as pregnant women. That's right.